Hey everyone, welcome back to another fun and exciting Algebra 1 class. Today we are going to jump into chapter number 9. Congratulations, another chapter down. We are starting chapter 9. That means we only have 4 chapters left, so we are moving toward the end of the book. Keep working hard. This is on page 308. Today we're going to talk about quadratic equations. Now you might think, I've already done quadratic. And you're right, you have already done quadratic equations. This lesson is really going to kind of introduce the next few lessons, and it's going to review what we've already talked about with quadratics. So maybe this will be an easy lesson for you because we've kind of already done a lot of it, but there is some information that I need to get you, and then we need to do some of this practice before we start in the rest of this chapter. There are 4 different ways to solve quadratic equations. We've only done one of those ways. To this point, we have only done the factoring method. Remember when we set the factor equal to 0? We were solving quadratic equations. You might not have known that, or we didn't call it that, but that's what you were doing. Look down at these. So number 1 is factoring. Number 2 is called extracting the root. That will be taught in the next lesson. Number 3, in the lesson after that, we will learn completing the square. And then the last way that we'll learn in this chapter is called the quadratic formula. In other words, there are lots of ways to solve quadratics. Factoring is just one of the ways. Sometimes it's easier to complete the square. Sometimes it's easier to use the quadratic formula. Sometimes it's easier to factor. Sometimes it's easier to extract the root. So we learn all 4 of these so that we can apply them in different ways whenever that is the preferred method to use on that problem that they give you. Okay, so you don't necessarily need to write that down right now, although that's probably a good thing to write down. We will be using this over the next few lessons. All right, again, they're on page 308. Let's talk about what's called the standard form of the quadratic. The standard form of the quadratic. This is really important. You better write this down right here, okay? This is the standard form of the quadratic. What does that mean? Well, anytime we start working on a quadratic, anytime we start factoring, anytime we start completing the square, using the formula, whatever we're doing, we want to put it into standard form. So we need to understand standard form. This is important. So what does it mean? Well, this is the x squared term. Notice the a. What is the a? The a is just the letters are numbers. Well, the a, b, and c are numbers. They're, sometimes it'll say like 2x squared. Okay, so the a might be a 2. I'm using the letter A because we never know what the number is going to be that's there, but the x squared is always the same. Well, I mean, it could be y squared or something like that, but most of the time they use x squared in these. So the A, what is the A? The A, if you look down here, the A is the quadratic term. What does that mean? Well, quadratic is a Latin-based term. It means basically squared. That's the easiest way for me to explain it to you. So the squared term is the quadratic term. All right. In fact, the word for quadratic in Spanish it means 4, so square means 4 sides. So maybe that will help you if you know any Spanish. You'll know that quadratic means 4. So 4 sides, squares have 4 sides. That's kind of the root of where that comes from. All right, the next term is the b term, the bx term. What is the bx term? Well, that's what's called the linear term. Linear term means the line term. This term right here creates a line when you graph it, and it's just, there's no squared or anything like that. It's just the x. That's the linear term. Very important. The next term is the c term. Notice there is no x with that term, and this is what we call the constant term, okay? It is a constant, which means it's just a number. There's no variable to it. It's only a number. So it's 7, it's 10, it's 11, it's whatever number it can be. And then the important thing here is notice that is always set equal to 0. So the way that you should set this up, the way you should line this up every time before you try to solve a quadratic equation is you should have the x squared, then the x, and then the constant term, and then the equals 0. So it's important that you kind of put all that together. All right. Notice what I have written here with this cute little star, asterisk. What does it say? The a term must always be positive. So this term out front, you could never have a negative out here. That will not work. We can't do that. What if there is a negative out front? Well, here's what you have to do. You have to multiply everything by -1, and you have to change all of the signs. You have to apply the -1 principle where you're basically changing every single sign. So change the first one to positive, and then every other sign would change as well. We'll practice some of that here in just a minute. But that first term can never be negative. That's a no-no when we're trying to solve these. All right, so let's jump into one. Let's try it and see what happens. Well, the first thing you probably recognize is that thing is not in standard form. Look, we have our quadratic term right, we have our linear term right, but we are missing right here, we're missing our constant term, and we're missing over here our 0. So we've got to do something. Here's the easiest way to do this. If we subtract 15 from both sides, that will put in our constant term, and that will 0 out this side. So just move the number over. So check this out. That cancels, and we get 2x squared plus x minus 15 equals 0. Okay? And now we're in standard form. Now we're ready to solve this. Let's go back up to where we started. We are in this lesson, we're only going to be dealing with factoring. You've already learned how to factor, so you should kind of recognize that, and you should learn, oh, okay, I think I know what to do here. So what should we do here? Well, we should factor it. All right, so let's go ahead and factor it. We're going to have an x and an x, and our signs are going to be what? Okay, it's going to be plus, minus. All right, so now what we want to do is we want to factor. We have a 1 times 2 here. That's factoring our 2. So we can go ahead and put that. We'll put a 1 and a 2. Maybe we'll have to move that around. We're not sure yet what that's going to look like, but we can then factor the 15 and 1 times 15 and 3 times 5. I think I would choose 3 times 5, and we'll just see what happens. So let's put a 3 and a 5. Now what we want to do is we just want to try it and see if it works. So outers and inners, those are the two that we need to do to see what our middle term. Remember, we want to get a positive x there in the middle. So that's going to give us a negative 5x in the middle there. That's going to give us a positive 6x. Wow, we got lucky with that first try. That gives us a positive x, or positive 1x. So we got it right. First try. Sometimes it'll take you longer than that. So, all right, so we're good. These are our factors right here. And so now what we want to do is we want to set each one equal to 0, and we want to solve for those. So we can get rid of this 1 here. We don't need that. We're going to move the 3 over here, minus 3, and we're going to get x equals -3. That's one solution. Plus 5, we're going to get 2x equals 5. Divide by 2, and we're going to get x equals 5 over 2. So those would be our two solutions. You would then go back and check that. For time's sake, I'm not going to check that, but those are our two solutions. Those both work. When we check it, make sure that you're checking for extraneous, those ones that they seem to check, but they don't really check. That's what's called extraneous. They seem to be the right answer, but they don't check for you. All right, let's do another one. All right, same thing going on here. We have our quadratic term in place. We have our linear term in place. and then we have this negative 4 sitting over there. What are we going to do with this negative 4? Okay, well, what we need to do with the negative 4 is we need to move it over here. How do we do that? By adding 4 to both sides. We get x squared plus 5x plus 4 equals 0, because that cancels. That's what we want. Now it's in standard form. Look, we have our quadratic, we have our linear, we have our constant, and then we have our equals 0. That's what we're looking for. Standard form. All right, now we're going to factor that. So we'll factor x and x. Our signs are going to be positive, positive. And we'll factor our 4. It's going to give us a 1 and a 4, and a 2 and a 2. We're looking for 5, so 1 and 4 gives us 5. So 1 and 4. All right, I won't take the time to do it. That is the correct answer. We'll set them both equal to 0. Minus 1 to both sides. X equals negative 1. That's one solution. Minus 4, x equals negative 4. So those would be our two solutions on that one. Okay. Again, this is just kind of re-practicing, re-going over the things that we've already been going over. And so that should be familiar to you because you've done these already. All right, let's go ahead and do one more of these. All right, so now we have one. This one's interesting. Check this out. What are we going to do with this? Well, it's not in standard form, so we can at least try to get it into standard form by moving the 3x to the other side. So we'll get x squared minus 3x, and then this one cancels, equals 0. Now, technically, we're still not in standard form because we don't have a c term, but sometimes you're just not going to have a c term. So what do? Well, do what you know to do. Factor. You know how to factor. Take out the common x. So look, x comes outside, and then we have the factor of x, because remember we divide both sides by x, minus 3 equals 0. Don't forget that we're going to set both of these equal to 0. So look, x equals 0 is one of our answers. The other answer over here is x minus 3 equals 0. Move the 3 to the other side, and we get x equals 3, positive 3. Okay, those would be our two answers on that one. And then you could plug those back in and check them just to make sure that you're getting the correct answer. Okay. All right, that should be familiar to you because we just worked on that, not last chapter, but the one before. And so those things should kind of be, oh yeah, I remember how to do that. If you don't, make sure that you're practicing a lot. Go back and look at the factoring chapter if you need help with factoring. But really kind of the only spin on this right here is getting it into standard form, setting it equal to 0, and then solving for the factors. Okay? Well, that's all I have for you. Hope you learned something. If not, slide it back and rewatch some of that video. Okay? We'll see you later. Bye-bye.